An interview with Wynona Mulcaster, May 1973.
I don't mind being labeled as a Saskatchewan artist at all. I'm very much tied to Saskatchewan. I grew up here and I love Saskatchewan. I could never feel right living permanently anywhere else but Saskatchewan. And so I'm very proud to be called a Saskatchewan artist. Certainly I think the prairie has influenced me very much in the last 10 or 15 years. 20 years, I guess. Although I grew up in the bush of Prince Albert and loved it and thought I would never relate to the prairie, I was quite upset, actually, moving to the prairie for the first time and felt quite desolate. But gradually it just grew on me. And I spent a great deal of time outdoors and saw the prairie in all its changing moods from horseback until I finally began to realize its subtleties and really fell in love with it. And I think it's a very powerful influence on what I do. Most of my paintings are landscapes or have landscape important in them. And although I don't make a conscious sort of effort to interpret the prairie, it's there all the time. It's more dramatic in the north. From a painter's point of view, one of the things that a landscaper must try to avoid is being picturesque. And it is so picturesque in the north that you fall into the trap. You can't help it. You know, you have these wonderful shadows and dramatic pines and deep reflections on glassy lakes and things. And it's very difficult not to be caught in the trap. But it seems to me that the prairie in this area is more anonymous and hence more paintable. You have to make something out of it. It isn't already done for you. And this offers more of a challenge, I think. I didn't have very much formal training, you know. Actually, I started with Ernie Lindner, and he was a great inspiration to me, and without him I never would have gone into art at all. I'm always grateful to him for the early years and the enthusiasm that he instilled in me. Then I met Arthur Lismer, and he invited me to come to his school of art in Montreal as a guest student. And he was very good to me. And there I just shopped around and took one of each sort of class, you know. This was quite a stimulus to me, but I had to come back to teach. And after that I took odd summer schools at Banff and workshops at Murray Point, and I just painted. And that's all the formal painting I had, except for well, actually occasional people who would come spend a while with me. Ernie Lindner was coming to Prince Albert to give an art course for 2 weeks. And just because I was so bored in the law office, I had been, I thought, well, maybe if I could draw, it would be interesting. It would be something to do. So I had started on my own whenever there was nothing to do in the office. And I'd started copying Eaton's catalog because I wanted to be able to draw people. So I thought, well, here are masses of people. So I started page after page of Eaton's catalog, and I really had them down cold. And then I thought, well, I should draw my mother. So she posed for me, and she came out exactly like the housewife section on page 250. And she didn't look like that at all. And I was so discouraged, and my father just looked like the businessman section, and I couldn't get it. Oh, I was absolutely disgusted. So that was when Ernie Lindner came to town. And I had given up drawing people then, and I thought, well, if I could draw horses. So I met Ernie Lindner, and I remember I was introduced to him, and they said, he's going to, this is the artist who's come to Prince Albert, and he's going to give a course for 2 weeks. And I said, well, I'll take it, but I'll tell you there's only one thing I really want to do. I want to learn to draw horses. And poor Ernie was so disgusted. And he really chatted me about this. And for years they teased me about my desire to draw horses. So for about 15 years I never did draw horses. And then finally I let loose and started painting horses. But that's where I started with Ernie. After 2 weeks with Ernie, I was dedicated to art. And nothing else would do, so I told my father I was leaving the office. And I had saved $25, and we bought some second-hand lumber and some crooked 2x4s and built a studio out at the lake. Because my father owned the land next door to a cottage where Ernie was going to spend the summer. So Bodil Brostrom and I offered to cook for Ernie if he would teach us art. And he agreed to do this, not knowing that neither of us could cook worth a darn. And we went out and we built this cabin, the two of us, with a couple of girlfriends. And Spinks came out and helped us finish it off. He put the shingles on the roof for us. And we had a wonderful summer out there with Ernie and a whole crew of young, enthusiastic people. We had just an absolutely superb summer. And we heard the next summer that Murray Point was going to be the site of an art school. It just was fantastic to us, because here we were out in the wilderness, thinking that nothing could be further from possibility than an art school to come to us. And right next door, the next year, the art school was built. So Murray Point and Emma Lake has been very important sort of background to my art experiences. Well, I painted first of all in watercolors, but didn't really discover that they could be very immediate and quick and free. I started in watercolors in a rather tight fashion, and then found great satisfaction in moving into oils. But when acrylics presented themselves, this was much to my liking, because I like to paint very spontaneously, very quickly, and I like to be able to change my mind if I want to in a hurry. And I found acrylics were really exciting for me, because I paint a lot with a rag, sort of a velour rag, and I scrunch it all up, and I take great gobs of paint and I put it on with great gusto, and I paint large paintings very quickly. And the acrylic really contributed to the speed of seeing things happen. I find my ideas come very fast, but they go just as quickly, and if I don't get them down in a hurry, they've gone. So speed is very important for me, and this is why I really like acrylic. Now I'm painting in watercolor and using acrylic too, in a sort of a watercolor technique in a rather free way, and I think I will continue to do that, doing acrylics on good quality paper a lot next winter. I don't seem to have found myself very much at home with canvas. It's too bouncy and it's too absorbent, and I can't get it covered fast enough, and it just drives me crazy. So I usually paint on masonite. Perhaps I need to experiment more with canvas. But I think paper would perhaps be rather important to me. Well, I think for quite a time in my desire to be serious about landscape, I was very anxious not to be pretty. And I reduced color to simple earth colors and found that I was painting eventually mainly in terms of light and dark. And that the main impact and aliveness of the painting was dependent on the tonal value. And I took a summer school workshop with I forget his name, that New York fellow. Anyhow, he pointed out to me that he thought I was not really using color, and I was quite surprised. And then I realized it. And I consciously began to explore color. And lately, in the last 5 or 6 years, I think I have begun to be very much more aware of color. But I don't think that I really was using color. I was using light and dark. I sometimes use red, for example. I make a great red horse and black and white, but it's not using color. It was using light red and dark red, or I do a whole red horses, all red, you know. But I didn't use color to relate to color, to make the color sing. I really didn't understand that. And that was one of the things that I felt my lack of understanding about color has held me back. And I've only in the last few years begun to realize color relationships. And I think my paintings will get better. But I do regret that I didn't have a real solid understanding of color. I just used it sort of intuitively, and it apparently my intuitive feeling for color got me into a real rut. It's very, very easy for the subject matter to take over. Especially when you're so deeply involved with the subject matter as I am. Because I take the horse very seriously. I'm facing constantly a struggle of trying to disentangle my involvement with the horse as a medium for the classical art of dressage and utilize it for content in a painting, so that the painting is more important than the content is. And this, of course, is always the problem with representational painters. But the more emotionally involved you are with the subject, the more the struggle mounts. And whether I'll resolve that or not, I don't know. Somehow it's easier to feel emotionally involved with landscape and still retain some sort of detachment and to be objective about it. So it's possible that my most important work will eventually be landscape. Though my horses are always, whenever I have horses to sell, they're always sold. I'm always out of horse paintings. People always want them. But I never, or I shouldn't say I never, I rarely feel that they are my better paintings. Yet. But I never know. I always have a feeling I'm on the brink of making a breakthrough. I suppose every artist feels this. And this is what keeps you going. That just one breathless stride ahead and I'll be there. Occasionally I do a painting that does itself. It just happens, and it's kind of exciting that something takes over and the painting works out, and it's usually a landscape. And this only happens once in a long while. But I think one of those that I still feel really happy about, and I must say that I don't like most of my own paintings. I'm quite critical of them. But one of the paintings that I still like is the two riders that Mental Gallery had. The other is a winter road that the university bought, and it's been in the faculty club for quite a while. It's a fairly large painting in bleak snow with sort of a dramatic dark sky at the top and a roadway going through. And it's got a lot of what I feel I really have wanted to say for a long time. But very often I am impatient with my own paintings. I find them too busy. I'm constantly trying to say more with less. It's kind of mean. And I think the thing I want to say in painting is not something pretty. Not something, it must be kind of tight and earthy and not appear to be contrived, that it just had to happen. This kind of feeling is what I would like to achieve. When I do get into the swing and I really start painting, the ideas come so fast that I paint one after another, and I get going and I'll paint right on to the morning, and it's really exciting. And then all of a sudden there are a whole lot of demands come, and I have to break the spell. And then I have a hard time to get the wheels turning again. And sometimes weeks go by, months even, and I've done very little. And each, as the time gets bigger or greater, I find it more and more difficult to get started again. And then finally, before I can get started, I have to tidy up the studio and tidy my drawers and write all my bills and get everything out of my mind and do all the things that I've been putting off in order to feel free. And then finally, when the moment comes when I'm free, then I can start to paint. And then I say to myself, well, when I start painting after a slack time, then I have to do bad paintings. And I don't worry about it. I've built up this approach. And I say, all right, so I've got to do some bad paintings. So I prepare myself to do 6 or 8 bad paintings. And I do a bad painting. And I say, well, that's done. And I put it aside and I do another bad painting. And I put that aside and I do another bad painting. And then I begin to get a little bit better. And I know they're going to get better. I have this absolute confidence that it's only a matter of time. I just have to do a few bad paintings. And I really do bad ones. And then when I get all the bad ones out, then the good ones start to come. But the trouble is that I just start getting into the good ones, and then something happens, that there's a big pressure, and there are meetings, and there are demands, things that have to be done, and then you break the spell again. Sometimes, being honest with myself, I wonder whether that's just an excuse. Because there's a lot of anguish goes into this creative thing. It's not a fun thing, really. I certainly don't think that my work is an escape from reality. I think it is a coming to grips with the real And I feel that the real is much more than the physical. So in my painting I attempt to relate to my feelings about the landscape rather than to report the landscape. And this is the real reality to me. I really love life, and I love the environment that's around me, and I have no desire to escape it.